Why? Why would anyone in their right mind want to be taken off the front page of Twitch? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, my name's Jay, and some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is going deep into the statistics and the mind of me and our channel. So please have some grace, have some understanding, and some thoughtfulness on these subjects and what we're going to talk about. So, a background into how we got to be on the front page in the first place. Back in October, I applied to be on the front page of Twitch a little bit before that, but in October, we got to be in the main front page slot once a week for 4 weeks. This was pretty insane, pretty incredible. The experience was awesome, right? Thousands and thousands of people hanging out. Keep in mind, it may not actually have been thousands of people. The actual people that see it or interact is quite a bit less, but the fact remains that the viewership was way higher and the excitement was way higher, and it was just a fun time. And I'm very appreciative to Twitch for the opportunity. Let me make that very clear. This video is not to harp on Twitch. It's not to show any remorse or anything like that for the opportunity that they have given me and given our channel, because that's not what it's about. It's more about what's in my head and the effect that being on front page can have on someone. So, thank you to Twitch. Thank you to our community and you guys for hanging out and being part of the community. So moving forward from October, and then the first week of November was our last main page slot. From there, between November and December, there was no front page. It was just back to normal, and it was fine. You know, there's a little bit of drop down in excitement, just a little bit, coming off a front page because the energy's high, the hype is high, and then it's just like full stop coming right off of that. So there's a little bit of adjustment period, right? That's normal. I've talked to friends that have been on the front page and have heard similar things, so I knew that I wasn't unique in feeling those things. Going into December, Christmas, all that kind of stuff, and then after Christmas, I think it was December 27th or somewhere around there, within a couple of days, we started showing up on the rotation of front page. And then again, and then again, and then again. And I was like, is this going to be like is this a 1 week thing where like maybe our channel's on it for 1 week and then they bring somebody else's channel on and it's just like a rotation? No. Every single night for 3 months, we were on front page in the rotation. So much so that became the topmost views for our channel was from the front page carousel, as it shows in my dashboard. Lots of things, lots of feelings, lots of confusion as to why our channel of any channel is the one that's shown on the rotation. Maybe it was the time of night that we were streaming, because there's not as many people that were on the rotation or on the front page before that stream that late. Now, let me stop for a second and tell you that the reason I'm making this video is not for exposure or anything like that. It's more to explain where my head is and was at, and hopefully this can be a learning tool for Twitch and other Twitch streamers to maybe understand what the effect can have on me, on you, and people in the future on Twitch and in the front page. Because a lot of people think that more exposure means success, and it could help, but it may not be the sole cause. And hopefully my thoughts and where my head is at can be a tool that's used to improve Twitch and this feature in the future. So moving forward, the positives and negatives of being on the front page. The positives are very obvious, at least to me. More exposure to the channel. What could possibly be bad about that? We'll get more to that later. It is hard to gain exposure outside of your channel, outside of your directory, outside of your friends, outside of new people that maybe choose to host you. It's really difficult to get exposure outside of that. I know that Twitch is working on a lot of features for non-partnered streamers, for other partners that haven't been on the front page, the recommended tools and stuff. I think that's fantastic because it's using data from a person's viewership and saying, hey, maybe you'll like this person. So it's using smart tools and algorithms to figure out maybe other channels that they may like. I think that's a great feature. And the fact that they're working on that stuff shows that they care, and that's awesome. For people that aren't on that, or thinking about exposure, it can be very difficult and scary to try a new game in a new directory or something like that without some kind of exposure, because the top streamers come in and they're going to be on the top of the directory in a new game when it releases, or maybe even a game that doesn't have a huge audience or anything like that. Thinking about streaming that game can be hard because you know that you're going to take a hit, unless you're fortunate enough to be one of those variety streamers that can carry an audience anywhere, right? For somebody like me who mains a game like Destiny, thinking about streaming a new game can be difficult. And even though I've been streaming for 3.5 years, it still is difficult. And I'm trying to put myself out there, right? So having that exposure on front page was nice in a way, because I knew that, things were going to stay relatively steady and, but still stressful. And even though you know that you're going to take a hit to viewership, it still plays with your head a little bit. I try to focus on the people that are there, not so much the people that aren't there. But even still, this keeps going, even though your heart and your want is to only focus on the people, right? Because that's what it's about. Remember, it's always about the people, not necessarily about the numbers. Now, another positive to being on the front page rotation is more channel views, which has its positives and negatives, and we'll get to the negatives in a minute. You get maybe some new subs. Nothing crazy, maybe a handful. People that found you, thought you were entertaining, funny, chill, whatever, right? You get maybe a handful of Twitch Prime subs, maybe a handful of new subs, and that's cool. That's nice, right? You get quite a few new followers. We did have an influx of followers, and more on that later, specifically. You get a higher concurrent viewership, some days more than others. Some days we would have maybe a bump of 20%, right, in viewership. Other days, 3 to 4 times our normal viewership. Sounds great, right? And maybe even perhaps you have some more opportunities with companies because your numbers are higher. Because companies, more often than not, are going to focus on your numbers. So the fact that they're higher could play in a benefit for you. There's a lot of underlying tone there with these positives for me personally, and I'm going to kind of talk about those now. I was trying to think of more positive things, but for me, those were for the most part, it. Maybe if there's more things that I wasn't thinking of, you guys could comment. But going on to the negatives, right? And a lot of this relates back to the positives, like like more exposure, but right, you have the positives and negatives. More exposure can bring negative attention, right? You have trolls that jump in that you've never seen before, that have never been in the directory. They make fun of the game you're playing. They make fun of you or me. Hey, Baldy. Never heard that before, right? Whatever it is, right? You just get the trolls. That's normal. But there's an influx. I had to change my mindset a little bit as to how to treat new people and how to be on my toes more. And I think that affected the way that I responded to the kind people, the normal people, the people that are part of our community, because I'm ready. I'm mentally prepared for those trolls and I don't want them to bother me. But that feeling translates into other ways, which I think is a negative. You get, with those influx of followers, a good 30-40% of them may not even be real. You have Endgame Movie 19, Endgame Movie 20 within an hour of each other following. I look at my Streamlabs, I'm like, hey, thanks. No, that's a bot, right? You start seeing it after 3 months. You start seeing these patterns. I would see that once or twice a week, just people that aren't real. And I don't want to think that. I want to think that every follower is a real person and I want to appreciate them and show them kindness, not think, oh, whatever, right? That's not personal. Or you get the typical cleverly racist or inappropriate names. Anybody that has ever streamed knows to look out for the word knee and ice. Those are two big ones. And that happened a lot. Probably happens to other people more than it did to me, even. Some people would follow and then unfollow, right? Just to see their name on screen. I didn't necessarily track it, but I would see on Social Blade a disparity between follows that it would show on dashboard for the stream and follows a week later for that day. It's like, oh, hey, there's 50 follows on the dashboard. But Social Blade says there's 28. Why the difference there? Why is there such a disparity in follows? And the only thing that I could think was a percentage of those people were unfollowing. More channel views also impacts the follow ratio because it's not a normal amount of views for the channel, right? You get an influx of views. On the channel, I'd get 2 to 3 times the normal amount of monthly views on the channel, but follows didn't necessarily follow that same ratio. So before I was ever on front page, we had a 1 in 20 viewer to follow ratio. And then after the front page stuff, and this is 3 months, it took that 1 in 20 ratio to like a 1 in 40 or a 1 in 45 ratio, which I think that ratio says a lot. It says that a certain percentage of people that view your channel, your stream, find it worthy enough to follow, which I find following a pretty big deal because that's somebody making a commitment. They're thinking, hey, I want to come back, right? That's a person saying that. It became less personal being on front page. Active chatters, things like that, really didn't change that much. Maybe you get a small increase in chatters. Now, chatters is the people that are actively chatting. Now, don't get me wrong, lurkers are great, right? Lurkers are essentially the backbone of Twitch. I lurk a lot in streams, right? I don't necessarily type in all the streams that I'm in, but I noticed that there wasn't a huge change in chatters from being on front page and not being on front page. That means probably a large percentage of those people that are seeing on Twitch maybe left their window open, right? Maybe maybe they're cycling through the carousel, they looked at you for 2 seconds and then they moved on, right? Sure, a view is a view, but I think a lot of those people that are counted as views aren't actually interested in your channel. I feel like we'd get a new chatter or a new person in our community every once in a while, maybe one or two new people a day, right? Which is great. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? One person is one person. That's a new person to talk to. I don't want to make light of that. Okay. I also noticed that things like income, subs, and follows didn't change so much that I could really attribute or give credit to the front page for the exposure of that. It's not all about those things, but thinking about the positives and negatives of the front page, I did notice that there wasn't a huge change, right? So that weighed a little bit in my decision as to whether to stay on or to ask to be removed. Concurrent viewership fluctuated so much that I got to a point where I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I didn't know what our actual number was versus what number was attributed to the front page. And that started to kind of wear on me a little bit. Because when a number was drastically larger than normal, I changed a bit, right? My expectation of chat speed and other things would change. And I didn't look at my numbers a lot, right? I would peek at them whenever I felt like there was an influx of new followers or things in chat got a little bit quicker or things like that. I would peek and be like, hey, what's going on? Are we on front page again? And usually I would be right in my assessment. Sometimes I wouldn't be. But I don't want to have to put that pressure on the community, on the chat, to act a certain way because a number's higher. I don't think that's fair. But that's what my brain would do. It would be like, hey, we have 3 times more than normal viewership. Why is chat slower than normal? What's going on? It started to get into my head like, is somebody view-botting us or is it front page? Sometimes I wouldn't know, because the reality of streaming for me is that I want to appreciate everything that's shown to me, that's shown to us. And it got to a point where I was thinking about the numbers more than the people, and that started to get in my head and I didn't like it. And at a certain point, I felt like things needed to change. Now, when you reach out to companies and things like that, you do have to think about numbers, right? Numbers is probably the number one thing that they use to consider you for whether they want to work with you, because you're talking about exposure for the company, right? I wish it wasn't as important as it is, but the fact of the matter is it is a huge deal. And if you want to work with a company and you don't know your numbers, then odds of actually having a productive conversation is hard, right? I'm the same person now than I was a week ago when we were on the front page rotation and we were having an influx of people, right? But when you talk to a company, they don't know where the views are coming from necessarily. And it would get in my head a little bit that a lot of our views were coming from front page and they weren't real, right? The base number from our channel wasn't what I was communicating to companies, right? And that made me feel bad. I didn't like that because I was putting on this facade, or potentially putting on a facade. I really didn't talk to many companies while this was happening. The relationships that I did make were during our first or slightly after our main front page slots. And I was very upfront with them. Hey, we've been on front page, so there's been a spike in viewership, right? I couldn't not say that. Being on the front page rotation on a regular basis starts to feel a little bit like view botting or channel embedding. And for those who don't know what channel embedding is, it's when you have your channel or somebody's channel on a website. Somebody goes to the website to see the content on the website, and you're somewhere on that page, or a channel somewhere on that page. The person visiting the website 9 times out of 10 won't even see the channel or doesn't really care that much about it, but that still counts as a view. It still counts as a page view. It still counts as a channel view. It still increases viewership on Twitch. that's kind of what the front page rotation felt like. So it started to feel artificial. And the the words artificially inflated viewership is something that Twitch uses as a term and discourages it, especially when people were applying for partnership. So it seemed a little ironic to me that this inflated viewership was happening to our channel. And again, I want to make it very clear that I'm not upset at Twitch. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity, but I'm just more talking to the feelings that I have and the experiences and kind of what my brain was telling me it felt like. Inflated viewership basically means that there's a large influx in number, concurrence, and channel views, but not a whole larger impact on chatters or people that are actually interacting with you or your community. So that's why it felt that way. Being on front page would put me higher in a directory, whether it's Destiny or Anthem or whatever, a new game that I'm playing. I felt like that was unfair to other broadcasters who more deserved to be in that position. Because for those who don't know how viewership and slotting works in directories, the more viewership you have, the higher you are. The easier it is to see, and it just tumbles down, right? If you're top of a directory, especially of a new hot game, you're likely to be the first channel that somebody clicks on. And so a couple of times when I would switch to a new game, we would have that like 3 to 4 times viewership, and I would be up in the top of the directory. And we would get a lot of awesome people come in to hang out, and there's nothing wrong or against the people that came to hang out because they were awesome. But the fact that we were higher in the directory made me feel really self-conscious and made me feel really bad because we were given an opportunity that somebody else wasn't, and so they were taking the punishment from that because I was higher in the directory because of a front page slot, and I felt like that was unfair to them. And when sometimes when that would happen, when I'd be higher in a directory, say Apex, for example, I did a bounty in Apex and our viewership was super high, and it was really late in the stream. So usually chat gets a little bit quiet if I'm going really late because it's later than I normally stream. So, you know, it was a little bit more quiet, and people would come in and accuse me of view botting, accuse me of follow botting or something because the number was so high and chat wasn't going the speed that you would expect it to go with that amount of people. And of course, when somebody says something, I can be like, go check out twitch.tv, tell me what you see, right? But there's people that are coming in or people that see and they don't say anything, right? It's easy to explain to the people that do say something why there's elevated viewership, but there's nothing that I can do to the people who are thinking that I can't communicate with. And that gets in my head, right? I can't communicate to people that are thinking these thoughts, that I'm cheating or whatever, that we're actually on the front page. And that really stressed me out. I would never want people to think that I was trying to cheat to get ahead. Before partnership, we were aggressively view botted for about a month, and this was something that went rampant through the entire Destiny directory. I was stressed out every single night. I didn't want to stream because we were view botted on every, like, half, literally 50% of our streams were heavily view botted, double the viewership, right? And I just was super stressed out and felt like everybody hated me and just really got in my head. And so feeling that is not something I ever want to feel again. Thinking back on the Apex stream, I profited from the opportunity of being on the front page. I did a bounty and was paid more because viewership was higher. That's not okay with me. Profiting from a pure opportunity that was given to me just doesn't sit well, right? So that's another reason why I had to consider, is being on front page something I want to do? And I was also getting I was profiting a little bit from sponsorships as well because viewership was higher. And I want to have a fair and honest relationship with the people that I work with, and I didn't feel like that was fair. Ironically enough, ad revenue went down a little bit, which I thought was weird. I was thinking maybe there was some correlation to being on front page because perhaps Twitch knows what viewers come from or what viewership comes from front page, so they cancel that out on ad revenue so that you're not profiting from being on front page, right? Which isn't a big deal, but it was just something to think about. Another reason why, another negative for me to being on the front page rotation is that I'm stubborn. I don't necessarily want growth or success to be defined and given credit to an opportunity that we were given to be on front page. I want to feel like we earned it. I want to feel like we earned it. I want to feel like we didn't take any shortcuts, right? And to me, front page feels a little bit like a shortcut. It's an amazing opportunity, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining about it. It's just sometimes my head goes, man, what if a couple of years down the road something happens and people are like, oh, it's just because he was on front page. And my head starts to swirl these thoughts around and it makes me uncomfortable. I want to focus on the people. Once again, I want to focus on the people that are there. I want to focus on the community aspect of streaming, less so than just pure numbers or profit or whatever. And it started to feel a little bit more in that side than it did on the community side, which that was another thing for me to consider. But Jay, people asked, what if Twitch thinks that you're a good representation of what they wanted and they wanted you to have more exposure? Could be, maybe. But the reality was we were chosen for front page randomly because we were originally on the big front page rotation or the big front page opportunity, right? And so the algorithm takes all the people that have ever been on front page on the big spotlight front page and they put them into a basket. And if you happen to be streaming, it will try to see if you should be in the carousel or not. And again, I'm guessing because of when we stream that we happen to be at the top of that list pretty much every night, which was very lucky for us, right? I want to make that very clear. It was very lucky for us. But that's why I wanted to be removed from Twitch. In conclusion, are the negatives worth it for exposure? Maybe. Maybe to some. But I honestly and ultimately think that short-term growth could hinder long-term sustainability and community and growth. I would rather grow slowly, steadily, and really thinking about community than just some overnight success. I think overnight success might be nice in the short run, but in the long run, you're going to feel a little empty, I think. Maybe not. I could be wrong. People are thinking of me as some idiot, right? I stripped away an opportunity. Could be. I could be completely dumb, but at least I'm happy dumb. At least I'm able to think about the people that are there and not a number that's representative of people that aren't there, or maybe that they are there, or maybe they don't care enough about me, or what. My brain just keeps going, right? If I could give some help or advice to Twitch as to how to improve this, I wish there was a way to control it a little bit more. When I originally reached out to my partner rep, I asked, is there any way to maybe get on once a week or maybe twice a week? Or maybe have it just be less often. And there's not. It's on or off. And that's why I chose off. Maybe the number of views, channel views, concurrent views, maybe it only counts the people that are actively watching. Maybe they have to hit a certain amount of time watching your little image on the carousel to count, right? If they're just flipping through, I don't think it should count. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe they do have some logic in place to state that you have to watch for 60 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever it is. But it doesn't feel like they're watching. Maybe it's just me. Could be. I want to make it very clear again that I'm very appreciative of the opportunity from Twitch, to be on the front page in the first place, to be in the carousel rotation. It's an amazing opportunity, but I'm not ready for it yet. My head's not ready for it yet. Maybe in the future, right? My head's a weird space. Again, I'm very analytical. I overthink things. I'm very hard on myself. I want to be respected, right? And I don't ever want there to be negative thoughts about something that I'm doing or that I'm trying to cheat to get ahead. That's what it comes down to. A lot of it anyways. And perhaps me stepping down from front page will give somebody else an opportunity to get some exposure that deserves it. And get some notoriety and get some more friends to come hang out with them. That would make me happy. Perhaps again, in a few months, I'll look back and be like, man, I think it's time to go back on front page. Could be. And then people are going to watch this video and be like, man, he was a total hypocrite. So maybe out of stubbornness, I won't because I've made this video. But perhaps in a few months, it'll be like Gollum and I'll just need it.
I need it. The brush is cut.
On that note, thanks for watching. See you next time.